All right, well, thanks so much for joining me here today, and I want to give you a different take on the Easter story. This is from our friend and 18th century philosopher, scientist, theologian Emanuel Swedenborg, and he basically says Christianity has misunderstood what Jesus' death and resurrection has been about for the past 2,000 years. Because traditional Christianity holds it that God was angry with the world and he needed a sacrifice to make him appeased and right and reconciled with the world. And Swedenborg says, nah, not so much. That's not really what's going on here. What he asserts is that actually what's at stake is our free will. That if Jesus hadn't been born and come into the world, that we would have lost our free will. He says very specifically, without his advent, no mortal could have been reformed and regenerated and so saved. Well, you might ask, well, why is this the case? What was going on? He says that before the Lord's coming, the hells had grown to such a degree that they began to infest the very angels of heaven, and in like manner to infest every man that came into the world and every man that went out of it. I don't know about you, but to me this kind of feels like spiritual pollution. You know, evil comes into the world and it gets worse and it's worse and it's worse. And the idea that he's going for is that it got so bad that we lost the ability, or we were losing the ability, to choose to do good. We'd be born into the world and we'd have a heart of darkness. And if it's because of the world you're born into that you are pushed into evil, well, whose fault is that? It's no longer our fault. And God doesn't want that. He wants us, if we're going to choose evil, to be a free choice. Because he wants us to choose him, and that way our relationship with God is real. If we choose to love him and we choose to follow his commandments, that relationship is real. That's what the ultimate thing is here. That's what he's going for, is a real relationship. But if the world is so far gone that we can't choose him, well, that's no good either. I mean, and think about this in terms of just the pollution we see in this world. Factories pollute. If you're born into a city where there's lots of pollution, we know you're going to get sick. You know, it could be cancer, it could be asthma. You're going to end up at the doctor, and whose fault is it? Well, it's not your fault that you were born into a highly polluted city and you got sick. But that's what was happening 2,000 years ago. Jesus writes that you are the father of the devil. The desires of your father you want to do. Well, why do you want to do it? Because evil was just pushing and infesting into the world, that people were just going down that path. You do not hear because you are not of God. He says quite clearly that he's in this world and the ruler of the world is going to get cast out. He is taking over. He is kicking the devil out. And this is why we know God as the Redeemer, because he's regaining possession of the world. He's doing it and he's fighting the devil to do it, the prince of this world. The devil is being judged. Be of good cheer, I'm overcoming the world. Well, so how does he go about doing this? It's one thing to say you're going to clean it up, but what's the mechanism here? And James gives us a nice, tidy answer. He says, submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Essentially what happens is that every time there's a temptation, that's a spiritual combat. And what Swedenborg writes about this is that the Lord conquered death, or hell, by combats which are temptations. And the Passion on the Cross was just the final combat by which he finished his conquest. Take, for example, this temptation in the Gospel of Luke. The devil says, all this authority I will give to you, and their glory, for this has been delivered to me, and I will give it to whomever I wish. If you worship me, it will all be yours. So the devil is trying to say to God, hey, worship me, and I'll give you back the world. Jesus says, it's written, worship only the Lord your God, and serve him only. And as Jesus resists yet another temptation after this, It's written that the devil finished his tempting, he left him until an opportune time. Jesus submits himself to God, and the devil flees. That's exactly what James says is going to happen. The same thing happens with the final temptation. He's on the cross. Does Jesus want to be on the cross? No, he doesn't. He says, Father, take this cup from me. But, not my will be done. Your will be done. That's what he says. He's submitting himself to God. And with this last temptation, a temptation to remove human free will, but this time to the opposite side, the temptation to make a decision of giving up on humanity, they can't be saved. He was tempted to go outside of the way of the world order, the divine design, divine order, whatever you want to call it. He was tempted to give up on that, but he resisted. And with that resistance, the devil flees. And I don't mean to be flippant about this, but it's like Jesus is a bit of a spiritual environmentalist. Through his actions in fighting evil in the world, he removes the pollution. The devil has to flee. And therefore he makes free will available to us. And as a result, we also are able to be saved. We are able to have salvation because we can choose to do good. Swedenborg said, I used this part of this quote earlier. He says, without his advent, no mortal could have been reformed, regenerated, and so saved. But this became possible after the Lord had deprived the devil, that is, hell, of all his power. That was Jesus' purpose, to draw all people back to himself. It's a very different take on the Advent and Easter story, that Jesus is here to restore our free will or to prevent it from falling away. That's what he's doing. And so I think it makes more sense because it makes God to be, a nice guy. He loves everybody, and it's not about God having wrath and anger towards humanity that Jesus has to come and die on the cross. In fact, Jesus is coming not to save us from the angry Father, but he's coming to save us from ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I know myself, and I think I am far more likely to need saving from myself and my own desires and my own inclinations towards evil than I need to be saving from God. I think God's on my side, and this interpretation and understanding that Swedenborg is offering us gives us a lot to work with and a lot to like. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, give us a like. If you would like to see more like this, please subscribe to the channel. It does help out. And if nothing else, all the best and God bless.